Hello, young voters. Welcome back to another video with myself and the lovely Sarah. Today we're doing chapters 9 and 10. So final two chapters of Reform and Revolution by Rosa Luxemburg. Yeah, just realized I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name properly this whole time. That would be funny.
How else did you pronounce it?
Well, I'm pronouncing it like the country, but
How
it's
else did
spelled
you
differently.
pronounce it?
I don't know. Yeah, if anybody knows the correct pronunciation, put it down in the comments. So chapter 9, chapter 10. I didn't have too many notes, so Sarah, you can jump in at any point you'd like, but I'll just start us off. So chapter 9 is called Collapse, and basically she just dunks on Bernstein in this chapter, and she starts off by talking about how Bernstein, she basically lays out in a train of logic that I think was fairly good, was Bernstein has a slippery slope into denying history and class struggle, which to Rosa would be anti-socialist, as Marx laid out in his Communist Manifesto, and then later Capital, about class struggle and how that's like a force of history. So she's basically implying that he's not a real socialist and really just an idiot because, as Marx, and this is this would be her thoughts, not mine, as Marx outlined, class struggle is the dominant force in history.
Yeah, and she also states how Bernstein rejects the capitalist collapse, which is therefore means that socialism would never happen. Because if there's no collapse, then that means capitalism will kind of go on forever. And that Bernstein rejects Marxism and instead goes for more socialist liberal views. And she named names, and I cannot pronounce them. They're very oddly spelled. Maybe I'll put them on the screen or something. But yeah, she just basically calls out Bernstein for not being a socialist at all, and just being a liberal, being a lib. Sucks to suck.
Silly libs. Yeah, so it's interesting, in our time, to say, hey, you're not a real socialist. That would, that'd be like, okay, good. Would be probably the response a lot of people would give, and that would probably give more credit to the other person's argument. But you got to understand, in this time, she's really fighting for control, ideologically, of the party, and the future idea, basically the future ideology of the party. So in this point, she's writing for socialists in an audience of socialists, in a country that had a lot more class consciousness than I would probably say now. Um, yeah, I'd probably say now, and obviously to this is more of an academic work aimed directly at people in the party already. So, um, just something I wanted to point out that was interesting, in case somebody hadn't made that connection.
Those are all the notes I have for chapter 9.
All right, yeah, I have one more. She at the end of the chapter, she talks about how Bernstein is more of a utopian than a historical materialist. Again, before Marx, you had I guess you would call them pre-socialists, or they were historically referred to as utopian socialists. And then you had Marx, who came along and he did his, or what he called his scientific analysis, and materialistic analysis of history, and derived, um, the criticisms of capitalism, and then he sort of suggested, an alternate form of government. Um, but yeah, so what she's saying here is that Bernstein is one of the utopians who reject Marx, and if you reject Marx, then you can't be in the Communist Party, because they were fairly fond of Marx. So she basically, this whole chapter is an attempt, or probably the summarization of her arguments against Bernstein, in one final criticism towards trying to disprove him, as a socialist, and saying, like, Bernstein shouldn't be the leader because he's not one of us, and his ideology was plainly wrong, because she's basically trying to put Bernstein and Marx in direct confrontation, and obviously she's hoping people agree with Marx. So I think this chapter is probably the most important of the whole book, and then the next one she discusses a little bit of other things. But as far as criticisms of Bernstein's ideology and everything, I think this is sort of the summarization chapter before the end. Is there any more thoughts on this chapter?
No.
Okay. All right. So moving on to the next chapter, chapter 10, opportunism and theory and practice. So Sarah, my note is like towards the end of the chapter. So if you want to give your notes first.
Well, like most of the things she talks about in like the beginning of this chapter is just a continuation of chapter 9. Like she's just saying that Bernstein like doesn't really like take his direction to socialism. Instead, he like creates his own path, the liberal path, I guess. And that socialism on the word what? I have no idea what my notes just said. Sorry. Can't read that. Anyways, that's it. That's the last one I have. But besides one, that's from the end. So you can say yours.
Okay, so yeah, like Sarah said, this chapter, this one sort of talks about Bernstein as like a political force. Sort of the idea she describes him as an opportunist throughout the book. So she's talking about opportunists, and she's giving sort of a warning about this type of political ideology, etc. In history, and she's sort of saying, opportunism is not something that we should go down. Um, by talking about more of the political trends involved, and not just like disproving the ideology, but basically saying like this is not a viable political strategy. So this chapter I feel like is very important. I just didn't understand it, which is why I don't have many notes on it. So I feel like it's important. I can tell, like I can sort of tell that some of these ideas like bake through and seem very important when talking about criticisms of social democracy. But I don't really understand them. So yeah, but my note basically was that opportunism seems to be, and this is what she's thinking, I think. Opportunism seems to be an ideology that seeks to distract from the core of Marxist beliefs and is sort of a distractionary measure as a compromise with the bourgeois, somewhat like the Social Democrats, but worse. Bernstein is a good example of a top opportunism to be shown and refuted. So she's basically saying, I'm not just critiquing Bernstein here, I'm critiquing the whole political ideology through my criticism of him, and we should use him as a example. Um, so, yeah, Sarah, do you have any thoughts on what I just said?
Well, personally, I didn't think this chapter is that hard to read for one. I don't know why Nico, I like the other chapters were pretty difficult. I don't know why this one was just like so easy for me. So if anyone else like read it and agrees, like just like let me know, because I probably didn't comprehend this correctly if Nico thought it was hard to read. Like that doesn't make sense to me. But the last thing I have is Rosa just says that Bernstein is kind of just like instrument for the Socialist Party to use, like just kind of like he's not really like saying, his like own thoughts. He's just kind of being like the leader that they like chose. I don't know. That's like the last thing that I got from that. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't remember that. That feels like if she spent this whole book saying, he's an idiot, then why is she saying like he's the leader?
No, like he's in okay, like like in a monarchy when the king is like the leader, but there's obviously people behind the scene that are actually doing the work.
Mhm.
Like he's the king who's
But like, why not say like, because like she just inherently disagrees with everything Bernstein stands for. So like, why not say Bernstein should be kicked out? Like he's not, he can't be part of our organization because
no,
it dilutes it.
she's not like advocating for him to be the leader. She's saying that for some reason he is the leader.
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting. So, yeah, short video. But we have that whole playlist, and then we're gonna have the next video coming up with her final thoughts on the whole book in probably a couple days or a week. I'm not sure when I'm gonna release it, or we're gonna record these back to back. But yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments. because what do you think about the book? Did you read along with the book? Did you just watch our stuff, which is, it's fine. I didn't mention at the start, but the link to the book chapters will be in the bio, or not the bio, the description. And make sure if you enjoyed the series, subscribe to us, because I think me and Sarah are going to do another one, right?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Depends if I find a good book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any book recommendations, you can leave them down in the comments. We have a Discord, we have an Instagram. We have obviously our website. Go and check out Sarah's page. Go and check out my page. I just published an article about women in sports. Yeah, I think that's everything I have. Sarah, any last words?
I love you guys.